This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Before we get started, I want to let you know that we have a sponsor. Yes, this episode is brought to you by Nexo, the only provider offering instant crypto credit lines, which let you use digital assets as collateral to get cash in more than 45 different fiat currencies and stablecoins. In order to secure a loan with Nexo, you must first deposit collateral that will be used as a security deposit to repay the loan if you fail to do so. The cryptocurrencies currently available to serve as collateral are Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, the Nexo token, Binance Coin, Stellar, and EOS. And new collateral options are being added all the time. Nexo also offers the ability to earn 8% daily compounding interest on your digital assets, euros, US dollars, and Great British pounds. Now, this is up to 130x what the traditional banks offer. And what's more, interest is paid out daily, and you can add or withdraw funds at any time. Nexo launched in 2018, and since then, the company has established itself as the world's leading crypto lending service. So far, they have processed more than 1.5 billion for more than 550,000 users on their platform. And the company has 100 million in insurance on all custodial assets provided by the leading audited custodian BitGo. So don't worry, your assets are safe when using Nexo. Get started at nexo.io. My guest today is Marco Streng. Marco is the CEO and co-founder of Genesis Mining, a cloud mining operator with mining farms in Iceland, Greenland, Norway, and throughout Europe. And Marco began mining Bitcoin in his dorm room some years ago, I think, and has since turned that into a multi-million-dollar mining operation. Welcome to the show, Marco.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Marco. Well, just before we get started and start to talk about Genesis mining and Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoin halving and all that kind of thing, I think we better do just a quick check-in on yourself, your health, your location, as of course we are right in the middle of the COVID-19 global pandemic. Where are you and how are things where you are?
Well, thanks for asking for that, for my health. It's indeed a good question nowadays. And I'm in London at the moment. Things are very unusual. And I think here in the UK, unfortunately, the lockdown happened quite late, and that led to quite some spreading. And the NHS here is quite busy and overloaded. But I hope the best. I mean, our Prime Minister also has corona now. That was reported a few days ago. But anyway, I'm very optimistic. I think we will handle that all on a global scale. And I think it's quite remarkable how the whole world is treating that and making that heavy trade-off between health and reducing the number of deaths as much as possible in a trade-off on economical hit, on taking an economical hit basically, and really having some major costs to that. But I think that's a right decision, and I think I'm optimistic that we will get that sorted.
Yes, I think that is really the only way to be. You do need to hold on to some optimism. There's no point in dwelling too much on the doom and gloom, even though it is fairly doom and gloomy. Marco, look, it feels a bit weird to say this, but, you know, these are weird and crazy times. But to be honest, 10 minutes before we got on the call today, Marco, my partner, she had, it's always an ominous sign when you get an email that says, all hands company Zoom meeting, and she got that email, and so I kind of sat in and eavesdropped on her Zoom call about half an hour ago, in which her entire company was effectively shut down and everyone was made redundant and on no notice. And yeah, I mean, you can imagine there's just millions and millions of people around the world are going through that process at the moment, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Nobody would have ever believed, I think, if you would like before it, just a month ago or so, if you would have told people how the world is going to look like
No.
a few weeks after, nobody would ever believe. They would have probably laughed at you and said, "What? Everybody's staying at home and nobody going out, nobody allowed to go out globally?" Yeah, I mean, but it is as is, and I actually think that a lot will now from these times will be adapted. A lot of behaviors that we're experiencing now in that remote time, I call it, will really people will question themselves. Will see. Well, actually, this is quite comfortable to do it that way. Why don't we do it in the future? And I think it will have some major implications on how it goes on after. And I think it's also quite. I see it's also really a productive time. Remote calls and video conferences are also quite good, and that also has some benefit to it.
Yes, well, I think, there's the longer that this goes on, and the the deeper the economic and social impacts, I think there's more of a chance almost for a little bit of a planet-wide reset, really, and obviously there will be big opportunities out of that, and yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But in the meantime, remote work, sure. And look, it has actually been nice to sit at home for the last 2 weeks and enjoy more quality family time and go for nice walks outside and the peace and quiet. It has been nice to have that sort of pause. But yeah, what comes next is unknown at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we from the Bitcoin world, I mean, this is in a way something that we were like foreseeing on the economical sense since a while, and we have been waiting for a kind of global economical correction. And I think now it's here, and let's now see what's going to happen. And I hope really Bitcoin will use that now and outperform in those difficult times.
Yes, I completely agree, Marco. And I guess, the big question is, at what point does Bitcoin kind of step in onto the global world stage here and seize that opportunity? Some people say that perhaps it's too soon. Bitcoin is only 10 years into the game and hasn't quite embedded itself enough into those global networks and scaled enough, but it's ready from a digital gold point of view, so we'll have to see. But okay, well, let's bring the conversation back to yourself, Marco. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and I guess your sort of early foray into mining Bitcoin and probably at a relatively early stage. Pick up the story. Where did you first begin to intersect with Bitcoin, and where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from Germany originally. First heard about Bitcoin around was 2011, and I was studying mathematics by that time. I actually had quite a promising career in maths. I really liked and enjoyed doing it. I like my professor wanted me to be one of the youngest math professors in Germany, and I was on a fast track to that. I read about Bitcoin 2011, and actually by that time it didn't completely suck me in. It's created a strong interest, and I followed it. But by that time it was really early, and it was like the community was discussing, and like the forums, mainly on Bitcoin Talk, that was the most action going. 1 year later, I read about it again, and I was very curious. I checked back in the forums and etc., and I realized that really this ecosystem has emerged quite a lot. And by that time, I realized that this is really fascinating because the ideas behind it are very strong. And actually, it doesn't only seem to be ideas. There are really things happening, and the first businesses have come up. And the fundamental ecosystem emerged, like the wallet providers, exchanges, especially people started to trade. And I was also doing a lot of modeling on the blockchain. I modeled cash flows, like transactions on the blockchain on graphical models, and tried to predict based on certain cash flow patterns on the blockchain on that graph. I tried to predict market movements and correlations of those patterns between the patterns and the price. For example, if someone wanted to, if some big whale wanted to cash out and he collected the coins on an exchange and then sold them all or so, I thought that this must be trackable. But in any way, I was just really fascinated by that whole idea, that decentralized nature, and to make something really resilient for a financial crisis. And those whole ideas behind blockchain that fascinated me. And yeah, in 2013, I was doing that as a hobby on the side. I made my first mining machine. And I just wanted to participate in that, validate some transactions. And towards end of 2013, Bitcoin went from 100 to 1,000, Litecoin went from $1 to 30, and a huge gold rush was breaking out. It was one of many other ups and downs since that time, but I saw that this mining machine is really generating quite a lot of money. And I said to myself, wow, this is crazy. We have to take that machine and we have to duplicate it thousands of times. And we have to make a large data center with these machines and validate these transactions. And that's how it came. So we started our first data center. It was in Eastern Europe. And while I did that, people were actually coming to me and were asking, wow, this is so fascinating. How can we participate in that? What are you doing there? You're literally printing money in a way.
What year is this, and how old were you at that time, Marco? And that must have been quite a bold move. Like, what gave you the conviction to, move into mining at scale? Might not have been the scale that you're at now, but I'm sure it was a little bit of a capital intensive bet even at the time, right?
That's right. It was absolutely. And it was a craziness, because also all these parts for all the miners, they were really heavily demanded, because it was really a lot of money that was to be made. And of course there was risk. It was a risky move. But I mean, I was quite confident in our abilities. We knew how to optimize the mining machines and how to tweak them to be most efficient. And yeah, in the end, it worked out very well, actually, even better, even more than I thought. And we had also, we weren't the only ones in the market by that time. There were other competitors. Most of them are not existing anymore, but still, some of them are still there and are also now with us, the leading mining companies. But we have scaled the company up from really 3 people to hundreds of people globally now. And we have built several data centers, large-scale data centers all around the world. And I think nearly every continent we operate now. And the most important also now is that Genesis Mining, those were the infancies of Genesis Mining. And Genesis Mining has now emerged also to the Genesis Group. And we have also widened our expertise from blockchain infrastructure and mining towards building data centers and high performance computing data centers. Also for AI, for rendering applications, and for everything that the digital world in the future demands and needs. And we really think that there's a big lack of that digital infrastructure that really needs to be built. And we, coming from the blockchain, from the mining world, we really know our strengths in building the most efficient data centers. And that is something that we feel where we can contribute.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that. I want to dig into that a little bit more because that's quite interesting, particularly the slight pivot to AI. We've seen that before from the likes of Bitmain. But, well, tell us a little bit more about the Genesis model then, Marco, because, we understand that there's these massive mining pools that, the big ones that dominate Bitcoin mining on a global scale and contribute to that hash power. But Genesis, you're a cloud mining company, right? So just talk us through what that means and how you differ from some of the big mining pools. What's the Genesis unique model?
I mean, we are very known for cloud mining. In fact, I think we're the largest operator on cloud mining. And I think that is also a very important service that is, I think sometimes underestimated, because it is something that contributes to more decentralized mining. And actually, the most important thing that I think that we contribute is that we make everybody, we give everybody the possibility to get into mining in an efficient way. And in a better way than as someone could by buying a machine and mining at home, which is basically doomed to fail.
Yes.
And I think that is very important because these large-scale mining operators, I mean, the space is heavily centralizing, and there are more, and the large-scale operators are growing bigger and bigger, and and that goes a little bit away from Satoshi's vision that everybody should have the chance to mine. And that's why we thought, well, why don't we build a large scale data center and then just let everybody have the chance to participate in that and buy the capacity from that data center. And so that is really, I think, an important thing. We also want to make it more trustless going forward. It's a very difficult, cryptographically difficult task because there's always kind of trust from the user towards us involved. But we have good ideas how to do that. And but also, I think what is what is not to be forgotten is that we are a large scale operator ourselves. So it's the cloud mining is one service that we offer, but of course we run large scale mining operations for ourselves since the beginning, and we keep on growing them also. And I think we are one of the largest operators in the mining in Bitcoin mining on the globe.
You mentioned before about these massive data centers that you have and the move towards AI and I guess providing computing power for the digital world. So I mean that makes sense on an intuitive level, but I don't quite understand what you mean when you say AI. And this is, we've heard Bitmain talked about this in 2018, I think, and that was perhaps seen by many as an ill-conceived move. That's sort of, there was this narrative that Bitmain was kind of split between which direction it wanted to go, and I don't know if that ended too well for them. So what is, you explain it from your perspective?
It's a very good question. So we took that topic. I mean, there was a lot of mining companies that also then had the idea to say, as you said, I mean, Bitmain is one example. Many others too, saying, we build data centers, and by the way, we can also do high performance computing. But I mean, first of all, we had a lot of GPU mining capacities and expanded them also from very early days on. But because we were also mining Litecoin and Dash and like all these other GPU mineable altcoins, and Ethereum, of course, were very important. And so we had quite a lot of GPUs. But that doesn't mean, and that's very important, it doesn't mean that you can just say, okay, we go into AI because we have some GPUs. We really took that topic very serious. We started a company for really expanding into that market with a very full commitment. That company is called Genesis Cloud. And and our goal was to make it similar than the blockchain infrastructure or in the mining where we offered the cloud mining. We wanted to do that for neuronal networks and general or TensorFlow, general AI, and rendering applications. And we wanted to do that for a highly price optimized way and in a very efficient setup. And yeah, we started Genesis Cloud already also several years ago, before even Bitmain or before any other made these major moves. And we are very proud of that company. It's also part of the Genesis group. And it's a business that is very similar to Amazon AWS, if you know that maybe, but there's one big difference. We are just much more efficient on the price. So you can get one GPU hour for significantly less money with us, because we come from the mining world and we really focused a lot on the cost. And you know where our data centers are. They're sometimes at the end of the world, because we have to really have such a focus on the costs. And that is not something that Amazon, for example, does or specializes on. And
sure.
Yeah.
Let's start to look at, the current state of mining then, Marco. Don't know where to begin, really. Obviously, there's just so much happening. We've got this crazy macro economic backdrop. You shouldn't even call it economic, because it's just a global. Well, it's a pandemic, and it is affecting all sectors of society. We have the Bitcoin halving coming up. Well, next month, the Bitcoin halving will happen. So, there's a lot going on. Meanwhile, the Bitcoin hash rate has been on a steady rise until quite a significant drop throughout the last month. It's just seems to have held steady again. But obviously, as much as the current pandemic affects all workers, it affects miners as well. Because the Bitcoin price has dropped, that has implications for miners. So yeah, a lot going on. What's your take on the current state of the Bitcoin mining industry, Marco? Where are we at?
Yeah, so I think that now this is a very key moment, and it's one of these moments where it shows how important it is to be ahead of the curve and to really be more efficient than the rest, because as long as you can make sure that you are ahead of the curve and you are one of the most efficient miners, then even if the profitability drops due to halving or due to the event that we have seen just recently, that means that some miners will get into the red figures and will have non-profitable operations, and those will be the ones that have to drop out. And they drop out, the hash rate will drop, the difficulty will drop, and the ones who remain in the market, they have a higher market share and they have a compensated downside. And in that way, I see the halving, which is coming up, as an event that will clear out the mining space. It will make the miners will lead to some more consolidation, obviously, and that really will motivate the miners and will really push the miners to innovate and to keep on increasing their efficiencies. In that regard, I see it as a positive event, and I think that I think the other thing to mention is that the halving itself should not be in any way an unpredictable event for anyone that takes mining seriously. It's an event that is planned since long time, and we have it a long time in our calendars. We actively, of course, plan with it. We know what's going to happen, and we are very well prepared.
Of course, and that's really what it's all about, isn't it, Marco? It is a game of efficiencies, and it's a game of attrition, really, and it's a game of long-term time horizons, because if you, such a competitive industry, Bitcoin mining, believe is probably one of the most competitive industries on earth, really, because the kind of capital that you need to really play with the big boys like yourself, and really, the game theory required. Yeah, it's an interesting and intense game of attrition, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a crazy one, and it's never boring. We are doing this in 7 years, but it never gets boring, and I constantly keep remembering how extremely also time sensitive this whole industry is. I'm not aware of anything that is comparable. I know the traders, of course, the Bitcoin traders, they always have, they are also a crazy example of because the markets never close, there is no ringing the bell or something.
Yes.
There is, so they're always on fire basically. But in the mining world, as soon as you manufacture machines and they get out and get shipped, every hour counts. You want to get them to the network, and you want to get them mining, and it's always kind of nerve-wracking. I mean, which you in the end never get used to it. Even after 7 years, I'm still really constantly pushing everyone, very eager to expand and really optimize everything that is possible within all of the steps in this whole process, from the chips, from the form, from the PCBs of the machines, everything around, from the whole data center layouts, how to design data centers, from the whole cooling and everything, where to build the data centers, how to scale them, and the whole, which territories, where's the best electricity prices. I mean, those are challenges and interesting optimizations that we really are very passionate about to follow and to improve to the absolute maximum possible.
Well, let's put you on the spot a little bit, Marco. I know this is a little bit speculative, but any thoughts on what you expect to see going forward from your perspective as a big miner, just in terms of A, the global macroeconomic outlook, and B, the halving and the pressure that will put on inefficient miners, and then the Bitcoin price and the digital gold, or the hedge against global economic uncertainty. How does this all play out?
So on the mining world, for sure, more miners will drop out. The large miners will become larger. To answer that short, and on the Bitcoin, in terms of crisis, I really, really hope that we can be there now in this difficult times and in this financial uncertain times, globally uncertain. And I hope that, we have seen in the market shock where really the markets crashed, also Bitcoin followed it. But I think it was more like a shock scenario. It was not necessarily that people didn't trust Bitcoin. I think at that time people didn't trust anything, they just followed their instincts and said, I need cash. Maybe even not even thinking about that they are going into fiat so much, but I think that I hope that a lot of that money that was extracted from the markets, more of that money that was in it before in Bitcoin, I hope that more of that will be redeployed in Bitcoin, and that in the end we will have a Bitcoin, hopefully even an all-time high in Bitcoin that we're seeing. But I don't want to encourage any short-term speculations. I really from 7 years on, we always said we are in it for the long term, and that's where we need to think. That's where we all need to act upon, and we really need to do our best that Bitcoin gets adopted, and really grows by adoption and not only by speculation.
Absolutely. I very much agree with that. One thing that is perhaps not so relevant in the short term, but it is kind of looming in the background and can potentially be an elephant in the room at some stage, is, Bitcoin's energy consumption, Marco. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, whether you see, because I've mentioned this a couple of times on the podcast, if let's say we come out of the current economic uncertainty and eventually we start to recover, hopefully, sooner rather than later, but it's obviously going to take some time. But then there's this, climate change, green movement narrative, right? And, that's one potential existential threat to the Bitcoin brand, is if everyone says, we've got to move into this new, clean, green, Tesla-fied world, right? And they'll say, well, how come, the Bitcoin mining industry is using all this energy, but, perhaps unnecessarily, depending on your point of view, but obviously, proof of work does what it does to create the world's, only real decentralized currency and keep it secure, all of that. So that's a roundabout way of saying, should we worry about Bitcoin's energy footprint or not?
Yeah, that's absolutely a very key question. And you might think that, like, if you look at the numbers and consumption and global consumption, you might at first on a first look, you might see, wow, it's really significant, and you might get nervous or concerned. But if you really look at it closer and understand also the dynamics, you realize that Bitcoin mining has, and also any other form of data center, high performance computing, etc., which also are in the end similar to Bitcoin, it's servers that are producing energy, have most of that, and particularly Bitcoin mining, have the privilege that they are not depending on proximity to civilizations or anything. And they can, in fact, be literally at the end of the world as long as there's an internet connection and energy. And that means that actually with Bitcoin mining, we can untap this huge and more than plentiful resource of renewable energy, that where we, for example, can build Bitcoin mining farms below the hydro dams, or next to the solar fields, or next to the geothermal plants, or on the wind farms. Yeah, I mean, that is just and that is really a great benefit that we have, and I mean, there is more than enough energy on that renewable side, and that basically means that we don't need to be concerned because we can. The great thing actually on top of that is that these renewable sources are the lowest sources of power, and I think that those two facts combined just means that the future of Bitcoin mining, the most efficient miners, will run these green or renewable source mining facilities, and don't contribute much to global warming in that regard, and actually even support the renewable energy industry. And as I think understanding that, I think shares a whole new light on that matter, and really shows us that there is a bright future in that regard.
Yes, I agree with you, Marco. I guess the challenge is just simply to communicate that narrative to the wider uneducated population who may not be as well informed.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, we are trying our best. I mean, we have a lot of mining data centers also, for example, in Iceland, and I've shown a lot of journalists also around. We are even flying like to the geothermal spring itself, like really on those volcano active territories, and which I'm constantly trying to tell that and to spread the news on that. But these dramatic, you know how it is, these dramatic world-ending news, they're just seemingly a better sell, and they seem to have a broader audience, or I don't know. I mean, I think this is really something that the mining industry should work on the right global perception on that matters. We are doing it, and I think it's important that everybody knows it.
Fantastic. Well, look, you're certainly playing your part, Marco, and I've seen that video that you're talking about. That was on Vice, I think. Is that right? Was that the Vice video?
Yeah, that was just recently one from Vice. But I mean, it was like a lot. Like, I mean, we also, I remember Anderson Cooper was there for 60 Minutes, and like really over the last years, a lot of people wanted to work, especially in the last hype, really in the last big hype. Everybody wanted to know more about Bitcoin, and of course, naturally, everybody wanted to know more about mining. And you know, a lot of the miners don't want to show anything. They are holding themselves more in the background. Some of them don't have also a high focus on green energy. So anyway, we decided that we show some of our facilities in Iceland, and that really attracted a lot of journalists, and we did regular tours. I remember, actually, it's funny, we even had one request from a Japanese tourist agency that was in the middle of the Bitcoin hype. And they asked us whether they can offer, like, you can do like a whale diving tour or so in Iceland. They wanted to offer a Bitcoin mining tour and it was a real mainstream tourist agency. And but that was too much for us. I mean, we didn't start like every week showing a group of tourists through. That was certainly a bit too much.
Yes. Come, tourists, and look inside our warehouse that is full of racks and racks of servers. It's quite a sight to see. Well, very, very interesting, Marco. Look, I'll put a link to that Vice video in the show notes. Let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we will finish off with the Crypto Conversation hot take round. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Whether you're an enterprise fund manager or a retail trader, buying and selling cryptocurrencies successfully requires price discovery you can rely on. Brave New Coin's liquid indices provide trusted US dollar prices for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. Featuring end-of-day or intraday outputs, you can count on the BLX, ELX, and XRPLX for accurate US dollar pricing for smart contract oracles, settlement price discovery, net asset valuation, and performance analysis. Visit bravenewcoin.com to find out more.
Marco, I like to finish each Crypto Conversation podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire Crypto Conversation hot take questions. Are you up for it?
Sure.
So I just want your hot takes, your hot fire, take your best shot. Here we go. Marco from Genesis Mining. Where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I would say a little bit more towards the maximalist, but not too much.
Yes, very diplomatic. I like it. Marco, what would you say is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion?
I think that Bitcoin will go to the moon.
Excellent. Marco, I ask every guest this question. It's a little bit contentious now as we get closer. Who do you think wins the American presidential election 2020?
Well, I think we should start a betting market on it. And see, let the crowd be wise and tell us the answer.
I'm sure there probably some betting markets on Augur or something like that, right? And Marco, Bill Gates famously said, we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. what does the blockchain space look like in 10 years' time?
I think there will be more adoption, and I think that there will be more adoption, not necessarily very visibly using the technology. It will most likely run in the background, and I think it will. I'm very convinced that it will contribute to make the world a more transparent and a more fair world and a more efficient one. I hope that that's where we're all in it. The adoption is the key.
Exactly right. Well, Marco, William Gibson said, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I think that the AI, I think that that in the AI world, we see much faster also growing use cases, and if we're talking to Siri or we see that AI is quite powerful already in that regard, but actually the mechanism behind it and how it can very quickly go and really overcome really major hurdles, and then suddenly really we have an AI revolution, and we have really smart thinking AIs living with us. I think that's something that I really see, and I hope really also that with regards to space, traveling to space, that's also something that is most likely really closer to us than we might think. It is not so far away, and we know a lot always when we say, oh, these things will take so long, we don't care about it. The world is really very fast in some regards, and sometimes things happen so quickly, and I think AI is a great example of where the fundamental has been laid out and can really be very fast.
Very nicely said, Marco, and I completely agree. And look, you know, the current pandemic is a very good example of why we do need that plan B, or as Elon Musk would call it, you know, the backup situation on a different planet, because humanity, we have shown in the past and the present, and a lot of times we do have a unique ability to mess things up, and we certainly have the power to mess things up on a planetary scale at the moment. Which brings me to the next question. Let's zoom out, Marco. What is the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think mankind is smart enough to embrace ourselves, and in the end, I mean, there are wars and there will probably always be wars, but I think we have overcome in the end so many difficult times, so many crises. I really see a great future, and I think I really believe also in space expansion. I think that we will go on other planets, and I can also imagine easily that at one stage we leave our solar system and go into other galaxies, and even and go further.
Fantastic, Marco. Well, I'm starting to think that you might be a sci-fi guy. So let's finish this off. Finally, Marco, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Well, I like the book Life 3.0. That's a very nice one. It explains exactly that dialogue about AI that I think we have to really face, and that we have to really think about, because AI can be there to embrace and to really make our lives better, or it can also be destructive. It can be destructive by itself, or also we could use it to destruct ourselves. But I think, as mentioned before, I think that the mankind is smart enough to use the first one to make our lives better. And I like that book, by the way. It's a great one.
So is that Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence by Max Tegmark?
Yeah, that's right. exactly. Max Tegmark he's a physicist and also a really bright mind. I really appreciate it.
A link to that will be in the show notes. Hey, thank you so much for talking to me today, Marco. Take us out. The microphone is yours. Tell the listeners where they can go to find more about you on your various platforms, or where they can go to find out about Genesis Mining and even get involved with cloud mining, Bitcoin, and other crypto assets.
Sure. So everybody, of course, can find us on our homepage, www.genesis-group.com, as well as our mining homepage, genesis-mining.com, and also on our cloud, high-performance computer cloud website, genesiscloud.com. There is no hyphen on that. Yeah, you can follow all of our public channels. We're very present on social media, Twitter. Yeah, I also you can visit my private Twitter account, and also on Facebook we're also present. And yeah, we hope that one of our biggest goals is to drive adoption and really want to make that whole blockchain space a better one, and a space that really is driven by innovation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Marco. All the best, and stay safe out there.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, boom. There you go. We are done. Thank you to Marco. Thank you to Genesis Mining. If you do want to get started with cloud mining, maybe make some Bitcoin, links to Genesis Mining are in the show notes. Thanks to Nexo for sponsoring the show. If in these very crazy times you happen to need a fiat loan but don't want to sell your crypto assets, that's where Nexo can help. Links are in the show notes to that facility brought to you by Nexo. And also, if you just have your crypto assets, you're going to hold them for the long term and you want to earn some interest on them, well, you can do that as well with Nexo. And again, link in the show note. All right. Also in the show notes, a link to that Vice piece we mentioned where Marco is flying around in a helicopter in Iceland looking at the Bitcoin mining industry, and also the book that Marco mentioned, Life 3.0. I like the look of that book, looks pretty good, quite relevant to my interests. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you are staying safe. It is a crazy world out there at the moment, even more so than usual. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave and New Coin